All right, everybody, welcome to our first episode of Fire Takes Podcast. I am Gwen, and joining me today is my lovely partner, Tim. Welcome, Tim.
All right, thank you very much, Gwen.
All right, Tim, what story do we have today?
All right, we'll jump right in. This one is a spicy one. Am I the asshole for demanding my husband returns my engagement ring?
Oh.
Because he is making me pay for it through our joint account. My husband, 30 male, and I, 28 female, have been married for just under 3 months and have been having a huge argument about my engagement ring.
It's a good sign.
Yeah, a great start. We got married 1 month into him proposing to me. It wasn't a fancy wedding. We had our honeymoon right after we signed the papers at the courthouse. He gave me a diamond engagement ring that's close to $8,000, a 2-carat lab diamond. He didn't have funds available readily as we were saving for a home, so we put this ring on a payment plan. I found out after we were married and merged our finances that he has been withdrawing funds from our joint account. We make roughly the same to finance this ring. I was just taken aback and honestly put off by the fact that he is making me pay for a gift that he gave to me. We've been having some arguments lately, and he feels the ring is a wedding expense, and it's only fair that I contribute towards it too. And that as a woman of this day, I shouldn't hesitate to be an equal partner. I call bullshit, shared my thoughts on this whole thing. First, you don't make the recipient of a gift to pay for the damn gift. An engagement ring is considered a gift in most modern societies, even today, and I don't care if you disagree with that. It's just what the cultural expectations are, and we never discussed. If he had any issue with that, maybe if he was adult enough, I would have had a discussion about how it makes him feel. Wow. See if his values and tradition align with mine. Second, I've been unintentionally partially paid for 2 installments now, which makes me a part owner of the ring, which is, I guess, true in some weird logic. Anyway, if I knew my husband was going to be making me pay for the ring, I wouldn't have agreed to buy it. Mutual consent is essential when a couple is deciding to invest in an asset. Owning a house and a car jointly requires 2 yeses, and I wouldn't certainly have said yes to jointly owning a ring he was supposed to give me as a gift, so I can retroactively decide now I never wanted to own it, and have been demanding that my husband returns the ring to the store if paying the ring hurts his pocket so much. So, there's a clarification because I anticipate a lot of people might wonder. I've always wanted a nice ring. Not going to apologize about it, since we never had a real wedding party, and I knew I deserved a quality piece symbolizing our love. However, my then fiance also knew about the expectation I had of him and was upfront about things from the get-go. Could have discussed things with me, like I mentioned earlier in my post. We could have seen if we were truly compatible like that. What I don't know was that he was plotting to get even with me by taking out a payment plan and using our funds to finance it. So this paragraph is really where the story kind of turns for me. I don't know how you're feeling on it, Gwen.
Oh, my God. I literally don't even know where to start.
I mean, so many red flags.
So little time.
Yeah. I mean, the financial, maelstrom that this marriage is starting with.
Enveloped in.
Right. Starting a marriage with $8,000 of debt, it really tingles my spidey senses as a older, 40-year-old man who has, been beaten up and gotten a few life lessons. Looking back to 20-year-old me, I may have made similar mistakes, but
you were just a baby.
But just a baby. But yeah, that's a tough one. And clearly the communication around money is so important whenever you're starting in a marriage
100%.
Like this. It feels like so many people kind of jump into marriage without that part.
Are you suggesting that people who get engaged and then get married a month later might be jumping into something?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good point. We didn't really harp on the whole 1 month long engagement. She doesn't mention how long her, how long the relationship is altogether.
Yeah.
By
okay.
taken.
So let's go back to the beginning of the story.
Okay.
So they are 30 and they're 28. Right. So they're not babies. They're not like they're at the point where they should know better.
Right. Hopefully. I mean, not every 28-year-old is, completely wise with the world, but they're not 20. after I had reread the story and like gotten deep into it, I'm like, oh, I had cast them as 20-year-olds because of some of the decisions that they were making, right?
Okay, well, first of all, I just want to say, great for them that they went with a lab-made diamond, but like a 2-carat.
That's a rock.
That's a chunk on your finger.
Yeah.
Like, yikes.
But remember, she
deserves
right,
a nice
she
ring.
Deserves it. Right?
Deserves it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
She sounds like the kind of girl that like has been
equality.
planning her wedding since she was like
Right.
5 and just found somebody to like slot into her dreams.
That's actually a really interesting point. If she has these expectations, I deserved a quality piece. Is it really? Is he along for the ride in this? And I mean, I think he's about to be taken for a ride, but I really do think that could be a good sign of a disconnect.
I wonder what
really fundamental level.
The annulment period is. Like is it too late for an annulment?
Yeah, but the problem is she's the one who's like having second thoughts, and this man, holy cow, should be running for the hills, and we don't get his perspective here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
That's the bad thing about these kind of stories, right? Is that we only get OP, who
right.
may or may not be an actual villain. But like,
well, we do have a little bit about the husband here. It says this accusation of plotting to get even. This caused him to flare up, and he berated me for being sexist towards him. Put my foot down, not because I can't afford it or refuse to financially contribute to give my husband a nice gift, but my husband's sheer stubbornness and tackiness about wanting me to pay is what pisses me off.
Okay, but like, marriage is not about winning or losing, right? You are not competing with your partner and like trying to win and like beat them down so they agree and you win the fight. Like there's no winning there. You will only lose in the long run. You should be working with your partner to find a resolution, not be like, well, I'm clearly in the right here and he is wrong.
Babe, in a relationship, you're either keeping score or you're losing. So.
Who is it? Who had the quote that said that?
That was in the Mike Birbiglia show last week.
One thing you'll find out about us is that we like to watch a lot of stand-up comedy and attend some shows, and some of them, man, they're just way funnier than I'll ever be, and I admire them. But we will quote lots of comedy pieces here going forward. But I find it interesting that she's like, he could have communicated with me about this. I'm sorry, is a communication only a one-way street? Like, I don't think so. I think she could have communicated with him before that. Like, hey, make sure that you buy a ring that you can afford on your own.
Right. But that's not, I don't think that's what she communicated with him clearly, but it was her expectations, not let's work towards, like, where do my expectations and your resources line up?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like, because when we got engaged, I told you, I don't want a ring over $2,000.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you were clear about your expectations, if you even want to call them expectations. It was more desires.
It's more like a guideline.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I think you were clear. You were very clear. In fact, you were like, this is specifically a ring that I would, very much enjoy receiving.
Well, I mean, it did end up working out that I found a ring and I was like, oh, this is a beautiful ring. I want something like this. Here, I'll send him the link. And then he was like, well, I could find a ring like this, or I could just click buy.
There's a ring just like this.
Ta-da!
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. But yeah, so that, that is an interesting point. Communication, obviously, they're doing some of it. She's giving him the shape of the slot that he is to fit into. Yeah. And he is doing his best to fit into that slot. I think that's...
Well, but she's like, now that I've had 2 payments of my money coming right. into this ring, now I'm part owner of this ring. Right. Girl, you're 100% the owner because it's on your flippin' finger.
Right. And it is a gift. And yes... Now, and what else is not clear, here's the question I would have, is if they totally combine finances, right, and like everybody's money is going into the pool, He literally has no other way to pay for this.
Right.
If he does have his own bank account, yeah, it's kind of tacky to use the joint account.
Sure.
I'll give him that. That seems so ridiculous that I have to assume that they combine finances, right? That's the only way that this makes even.
Oh no, she said that we combined finances right away.
Right.
So keep in mind, listeners, if you're keeping track, they have been married for 3 months and engaged for 4.
Right.
So clearly there was lots of time for communication and hashing things out beforehand, right?
Yeah. I mean, they didn't have anything else going on.
No, not at all. They weren't on like their honeymoon for the first month or whatever.
Right.
Jeez. When you're engaged, you're already starting the process of merging your lives together, even if you're not officially married and you're not legally bound to each other, right? Like we opened our finances to each other way long before we got engaged and knew the general layout of each other's financial holdings.
Right.
So here we have her who's like, well, it's coming from our joint account. And so that means that it's my money being used. But how can you tell? Mm-hmm. It seems like she wants to be the kind of person who is like, your money is my money and my money is my money. Yeah,
totally. I think that is, I'm looking for the language she used. Yeah, it's making me pay for a gift that he gave me. It's not we're paying off a debt that he came into this marriage with because I laid expectations at his feet that required him to go into debt, right? That there's some we words in that framing of it. No, it's me. I'm paying for the gift he gave me.
Yeah, so instead of like him using his income and keeping everything separate, then they have their household income together that the money is coming from. Like she really needs to let go of the mentality of my money versus his money.
Okay, so she does at least say, second, I've unintentionally partially paid. So she does at least admit that she's only partially paid for 2 installments.
Oh, wow. Yes, that's...
so gracious.
Real insight and understanding in there.
It's so tough. So in general, just for some transparency here, Gwen and I do not plan to completely combine our finances. We have kind of a hybrid. We're each keeping basically all of the accounts that we had before we met. And then we generated some joint accounts. And then from the joint accounts, our joint expenses are paid. And then we're each transferring a portion of our income into that account to make sure that account remains solvent and all the auto transfers come out of it. So I think it's worked well for us so far. We'll see how it goes forward here. I think it's definitely another way to do it. I think it helps with things like gifts specifically. It really, whenever you combine all your finances, it's tough to feel like, hey, I'm giving you a gift. But if their finances are truly combined completely, she'll never receive a gift again because she's always partially paying for that gift, right? This is a couple that I would definitely have recommended keeping at least some separate finances, if that's the philosophy that they're going by.
Yeah, and you can do it different ways too. You know, you can put all your money into the joint account and then give each other the same amount of allowance or the same percentage of allowance that you're putting into the pot. So if it's like 60-40, then one person, you get a limit of like, say, $500. And then the other person would get 60% of that and the other person would get 40%. There's like a ton of different ways to go about this if you want to work with your partner and you want to solve your issue together and not fight continuously about your money versus my money when it's a joint account.
Right. Yeah. You're a team now. You and your partner versus the world as opposed to you versus your partner. And when you spend too much time thinking about the you versus your partner, that's how money issues spill into the rest of the relationship, I think.
Yeah, I wonder how they would do in a like 3-legged race, right? Like is their middle leg tied together and then like they fall and she's like, your leg messed up. But your legs are tied together. Like there's no, you got to work together, right? And talk about, okay, now we're moving right, now we're moving left. You got to talk these things out. And I cannot stress how critical it is to have those conversations and to ensure that you're on the same page as your partner.
Right.
before you run off and have a whirlwind engagement and marriage.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it is also interesting facet of the story that their wedding was not ornate. Like this girl, like I deserve, an $8,000 ring screams, I deserve a big princess.
Bridezilla.
Right. I deserve a big princess wedding. The fact that they signed papers at a courthouse and went right on their honeymoon. I mean,
that is a bit of a weird dichotomy, right?
Yeah. That's amazing.
They are saving money for a house, so maybe they just didn't have the money to spend on a wedding. And,
hey, some financial literacy, some financial responsibility that you love to see it, right?
Which also, let's talk about the fact that can you plan like a fairy tale dream wedding in, checks notes, a month?
1 month? No.
Like we are having a backyard wedding, and we had almost a year, and there's no way we would have been able to pull that together in a month.
Right, not in a month.
And that's in our backyard, where we don't have to worry about like catering conflicts and availability. It's just
I bet if at least one of us was not working, that we could pull what we're planning off in a month. Other than the courtesy of heads up for our guest, obviously that that just simply takes more time than a month because we are having a few guests, not a ton, but out of state guests, and that's tough to pull together in a month. But as far as the logistics of what we're doing, I think we could pull it together in a month. Maybe not, and then also work 2 full-time jobs.
Darn, that work gets in the way of so many things.
So many
fun activities. Which, for anybody who's listening, wedding planning is not a fun, necessarily, activity.
Well, I think some people live for it, but it's just not a priority for you, right? It's just not something that was super important to either of us, and we spent a lot of effort on. But like I say, some people dream about weddings all their life, and some people dream about weddings all their life and then simply find a groom to slot into their view of marriage, which is kind of what we accuse this gal of doing. So I would highly recommend that OP and her brand spanking new husband go find a financial therapist to talk to, or like a financial counselor, or even like a money coach. There's so many people out there who can work with this couple and help them see eye to eye on the issue and how to integrate money conversations into their new lives. Yeah. I thought about, maybe a couples therapist would help them. But you said something, I'd like you to say more things on a financial therapist. Is that a thing? I've never heard of that.
100%.
Okay. Can you say something about that?
Well, I mean, they're like regular therapists that you go to, but like their primary focus is money conversations.
So do they have financial advising type training that's kind of tied into it, or are they just kind of good enough with money?
Maybe, but it's kind of one of those things that's like, oh, I do couples counseling. Oh, I do counseling for
addiction
kids or addiction. It's
true, right? Like personal finance is personal. The hard part about personal finance is often not the numbers. It's the, getting your mind to do the things that it needs to do in order to control your spending, control your, income, control your savings, etc.
There's no one solution fits all. There is a solution out there, and it doesn't seem like they are capable of finding that on their own.
Right. Yeah. Definitely a good recommendation to seek some professional help. And they really, if they want to be successful, they would really want a reboot.
Yeah.
This is kind of silly, and we laughed about it a little bit, but it's not the worst first fight to have, right? Like, this is a good opportunity, to kind of hit a reset on their communications, their financial future. Any other thoughts on that, or should we move on to another story?
Let's move on to the next travesty.
Well, this one's a little bit more straightforward here, I think. This was in from Our Personal Finance.
From Reddit, by the way.
From Reddit, yeah. Financial advisor generated just 13% returns in 2023. Is that good or bad? Seeking a second opinion. Hi, all. Yeah. Hi, all. Mid-40s, working couple here who moved to a financial advisor in 2019 have almost $1 million in assets invested with him. He has generated just a 13% return in 2023 when S&P was doing much better. And overall, since the account opening in 2019, we're actually down 0.5%. We have asked for a moderate growth strategy. I have a feeling our advisor isn't good enough, but wanted to get advice on how to confirm. He charges a 1% fee, is a fiduciary, and part of an apparently well-known RIA firm. I want to get a second opinion from another investment firm like Motley Fool or Fisher Investments. Has anyone done this? Any advice? Thanks.
All right. Well, one of us has a math degree and the other one doesn't. So...
What's 1% of $1 million?
Well, that's pretty standard, right? But no, like I want to know what the market has done in 2020, 21, 22, and 23.
Right.
And how much of that has been like from the composition of their portfolios, and how much has been him skimming 1% of that off the top. Right. Because I mean, this year that it would have been 14%, right?
Right. So year to date, if you just threw it in S&P 500, right? That's the simplest rate. Yeah. That we're up 10%. Year to date. So that's we're in 5 months, 10 days into the year right now. Now, if we go, obviously like 5 years, right? We're at, that's 5 days. I was like, I think we've made a little bit more in 5 years. Yeah, 81%. So, oof. Well, that's 5 years. So he said 13%. I'm trying to figure out 23 to 24 here. Yeah, 23 to 24 is about 20%. So if you would have just went S&P 500 and chilled, he would have made 20%.
It's a 7% increase.
Yeah, that's significant.
It ain't nothing.
It ain't nothing. That is at least, but what's good about what he's doing, right? He's noticing, right? Yes. I think a lot of people throw their money and they've got, I've got a financial advisor. He's looking out for me. And then, and 13%, that's great.
That's great.
There's a lot of money. He made me $130,000 just doing nothing. So I think the fact that he's at least recognizing it, he's asking for help, that's good. But yeah, a lot of advice coming back on Reddit. You're better off putting your money in index funds and holding on to the fee that he's charging you. You can watch your money grow as easy as a financial advisor can, and you don't have to worry about losing money on bad decisions by the financial advisor. So I think he's getting the right advice here.
Well, and Opie said they were in their 40s, right?
Right.
With $1 million.
Right.
Which is more than your average 40-year-old couple has.
Absolutely.
Net worth-wise. I don't have the stats in front of me, but...
I think it's safe to say more than average.
Yeah, more than average. Even if you split it up based on the fact that there's two people, that makes up the couple, average per person. But why are they in moderate growth investments?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point too, right? It's a more conservative strategy, right? I would say that we are both, I would say, like frugal in spending and everything, and then aggressive in our investment strategies.
100%.
Which is, I mean, that's a way to do it. That's the way we do it. But there's some other ways to think about how to handle your money, certainly. But yeah, I mean, I think that someone else kind of points that out, that even if you just wanted to be moderate growth, right? Maybe you didn't want to be like pedal to the metal, whatever the stock market does, I accept that. But you can get in a Vanguard moderate growth fund that's more conservative than the S&P 500 index fund and still get kind of the results and probably get more than 13%, right? Because you're not giving over one of your percentage points to a financial advisor. Instead, you're giving 0.04% to Vanguard, which still
much better.
That helps.
It's definitely not 1%. Like, it's so funny that you can think of it and say 1% doesn't seem like that much off the top. It's so little, right? 1%. Right.
But yeah, I mean, it doesn't take much playing around with a compound interest calculator to see that 1% over a 20-year career even can be very, very impactful.
That's the difference between getting a Lambo and a Honda in retirement,
Ain't nobody getting a Lambo here.
Aw. Pretty please?
No.
That's okay. The way I drive, I don't want to drive a Lambo. I already curb enough tires.
Yeah. No, right. Yeah.
We don't need anything lower to the ground than our current cars.
No. Oh my God. Could you imagine driving a Lamborghini in North County, St. Louis?
No. We would probably get completely hijacked immediately.
It would fall all the way into the pothole.
But then it'd be so low that some of these in North County, St. Louis are literally like small craters. Like, they're the ones where you turn down the volume on your car afterwards, and you're like, I'm so sorry. Please don't go thump, 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 thump. And then you hear thump, 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 thump.
Oof.
And you're like,
Yeah.
dang it.
So bad. So bad.
It sounds like your car got shot. Like, it's so bad.
It's not great. I've changed more tires in my last 6 months than all the rest of my life. So
It's been so bad.
it's not great. Okay, do we want to squeeze one more in here?
We're at 31 minutes. Is it a quickie like the last one?
Yeah, it's more.
Okay. We'll throw in a quickie here.
All right.
Save for work, people. Not that kind of quickie.
All right. What should I do with my additional $6,000 a year? Pay off mortgage faster, put it in the stock market, or something else? Interesting. Single person in my 40s, no kids, making about $95,000 a year after taxes. I have about $150K in my Roth, maxing it out each year, and $20K in savings. I took out a 20-year home equity loan on my first house for $150K at about 7.2.
Okay.
Who would do that? Us.
Getting a mortgage? It's over 7%?
And bought a
20
rental
years?
property. So he bought a rental property with this home equity loan on his house. He has about $500 a month extra after bills, spending, and Roth. It seems to me that paying down the home equity loan faster with the 500 is the safest bet since it's highest interest. Stock market could bring between 7 and 10, but it's not guaranteed. What would you recommend? Is there anything else I should consider? So this is an interesting one, right? It's right on the line. We're talking about his what's left over at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Money, right? So this isn't like some manna from heaven. It's just, hey, I've budgeted. I got $500 a month.
As our friend Frank says, that's his walking around money.
This is an interesting question. I don't know that I would chase after a 7% return in the stock market whenever I've got a 7% mortgage.
Well, I mean, so clearly he doesn't have any trouble meeting his bills.
Right.
Right, all of his bills are covered. But it really comes down to your own personal risk profile at that point. Can you sleep well with having $150,000 on your HELOC? Does it bother you? Does it keep it up at night? Like, there's all sorts of considerations that you have to take into account.
No.
Now, clearly he's up for some risk, right? Because he took that money out of his equity of his house and he put it into a completely separate rental property. So, he's got theoretically money coming in from that as well. But like, I've always seen HELOCs as kind of like a more formal emergency fund.
Right.
And less like an investment slush fund. So the fact that he has $150,000 and a HELOC at 7-something%, that would make me uncomfortable. Right. Because like, what if I need a new roof on the rental property, or, I need a new roof on my house and I have not enough money? Like, where are you going to turn to first to go get that? Are you going to go get a private loan at 20%? Or, if they'll even give you one? Or are you going to go to your HELOC, which is market rate plus plus whatever extra? Yeah,
and I think, so I guess this means that he took the HELOC and he bought the rental property in cash.
Yeah.
Quote unquote cash, right? So that's interesting.
It does give you a leg up in the market.
Right.
How many people listening to this have put in an offer on the house in the last couple of years and lost out to some ridiculous all cash offer, right? Like that's a not uncommon story these days.
Yeah. And like I say, he has this HELOC loan, which means he has a house probably that he's living in that is, at least was paid down, pretty aggressively. Yeah, I think your risk profile question is good. But I think there's other questions. Someone here posted that assuming just federal tax, long-term capital gains would be 15%, meaning your stocks would have to average 8.5 just to be equal to paying off. So it's not, if you make 7.3% in the stock market, you still got capital gains there, right? You can't just win by making 7.3. You'd have to make something more like 8.5 to make it equal to paying that debt off early. I think that's another win in the column of just pay the debt off, right?
Yeah.
And then a quote I first heard from Dave Ramsey, of all people, but so it's going to be conservative. But he pointed out to someone who asked a similar question, how comfortable would you feel taking out a mortgage and then putting that money in the stock market? And that's a good way to like all of a sudden insert the idea of risk into what you're considering here. You're putting value on risk whenever you consider that hypothetical question.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I'd love to have a 2.7% mortgage right now and more money in the stock market, because that sounds fantastic.
So
But that's
good.
not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a 7.2 mortgage rate, and there's not a whole lot of potential upside. The gamble on this is probably too high of a risk.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, we have a 20-year, was it 7.125% or something mortgage on our house. And based on our personal preferences and our risk profiles, we are going to dedicate more money to paying off our mortgage and hopefully have it paid off in 5 or 6 years.
Right. And that comes more from, just like OP here, that's going to come out of our walking around money, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's our money left at the end of the month. Where do we shove that? We make sure we'll get our priorities, we'll get our investment priorities, right? We'll fund our Roths, do all that kind of stuff. But at the end of it, we are living fairly frugally. We are going to have money at the end of our months, and I think we're going to shovel that into the blast furnace that is our mortgage right now.
Yeah. Well, and also, too, it simplifies our life, right?
Right.
Like, and I'm a big fan, not even from like a risk standpoint, but like just not having to keep track of an extra payment each month and transferring the money over ahead of time. You know, like it just simplifies things, and that brings a lot of value to your life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one less debt. It's always makes you feel better, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think that's probably enough to wrap it up for today.
Yeah, I think that's a good selection of stories from the internet, financial edition. But if you would like to send us an email about your financial situation or something that you're mulling over, please send us an email at
firetakespod@gmail.com. And also, if you have Reddit stories that you want us to check out and give our takes on, we have a subreddit at reddit.com/r/firetakes. Also, any stories that we talk about on our pod, we will post a link to on our subreddit, so we can continue the conversation over there.
And by the way, the / is the one next to the shift key, not the one above the enter, because I get those mixed up all the time.
All right, this is now a computing IT podcast.
But I'm an IT. What do you expect? Come on now.
Being very helpful to the
All
users.
right. Well, your friendly IT professional and your friendly engineer are signing off for today.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks again for listening. This has been the Fire Takes podcast. This is an entertainment podcast, and Gwen and I are not financial planners. You can reach us at firetakespod@gmail.com or check us out at reddit.com/r/firetakes. See more from Gwen at fierymillennials.com. Thanks all.